Good evening and welcome to the PI show. My name's Harry Nowicki and I'm with my colleague Tony Carbone, and we're here to talk about injuries and all the sort of law surrounding the what happens when people are injured. And welcome back, Tony. You've been away for a few weeks. We had someone come off the reserve bench, but they've gone back to the seconds.
Thanks, Harry. I appreciate that. Good evening, viewers.
Interestingly enough, the first case we're going to discuss is, I think, the foundation of the law of torts, or the law of injuries as we know it in modern times.
Famous
It's a
Snail
law.
in the bottle,
It's a
isn't it?
law in England, and it's a law in Australia. It's a law in all Anglo-Saxon speaking jurisdictions, and it's a fascinating case because the facts are very memorable. There was a woman called Mrs. Donoghue, and she went into a shop with a friend and bought a bottle of ginger beer. They sat down and drank the ginger beer in the shop, and the shopkeeper poured one glass of ginger beer, which she drank. Then her friend poured the rest of the ginger beer into a glass. And do you know what happened, or what were the facts?
Yeah, Mrs. Donoghue apparently drank the ginger beer. She sort of smelled at the bottom of the bottle and she spewed it all out, and she says she developed gastro. It was a famous snail in the bottle case, Harry.
Yeah, so the snail had disintegrated, the bottle had been sealed, and Mrs. Donoghue went to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, why don't you sue the manufacturer of the ginger beer? And the snail in the bottle must have got in by negligence. You wouldn't deliberately put a snail.
You'd think it was probably in the
bottle.
bottle at the time when they were supposed to clean the bottles out, and someone left it in there and it wasn't properly cleaned.
Could have been a recycled bottle.
Poured,
Then
so
they
something poured the liquid in there.
So the snail, the remains of the snail were in the bottom of the ginger beer. Then the lawyer had the bright idea of suing the manufacturer. And it went to one court in Scotland, and the judge said he thought she had a case. And then Stevenson, who's a manufacturer, decided, before judgment came out, decided they'd better appeal that. It went to 3 judges who said she didn't have a case. And then it went to the House of Lords in England in 1932. And do you know the result of the House of Lords?
She won. I mean, extended the old principle. In this case here, in the past, you'd have to rely on a contract, but Donoghue in this case, she didn't buy the drink.
If she'd bought the drink,
Yeah,
she might have had a stronger claim
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah, there would have been implied duties under the contract and things like that, which she didn't have in this case. So this actually introduced the law of torts into the English world.
The House of Lords, which is made up of law lords, and I think 3 law lords said she had a case. One said she didn't. But the leading judgment was by
Judge
Lord Atkin. And Lord Atkin said that the law is you are not to injure your neighbour. That's the law.
You've got to protect people in your reasonable contemplation. You know, that's some of the words he used.
But he said that at law your neighbour is restricted, and it's people who are in proximity or have some connection to you. And in this case, Stevenson manufactured ginger beer and wanted to sell it to consumers. So they were proximate or related.
Yeah, it was reasonably foreseeable that whoever drank the ginger beer in those circumstances could be affected by it.
Yeah.
So notwithstanding the fact that you didn't purchase it, you know,
yeah, so
you drank it.
she didn't buy the ginger beer off the shopkeeper.
No.
Her friend did. The friend's not named in the proceedings.
But that's what made it, you know, interesting, because traditionally you had to have a contract, and here is the first time the courts had imposed a duty outside of a normal contract.
It extended the law.
Yeah.
And as I say, the striking phrase, I think, of the law of Lord Atkin was that he said originally, you are to love your neighbour, but in law, who is your neighbour? And he said, look, in effect, it's people who are somehow connected to you in some shape or form. But so in a motor car accident, your neighbour is people who are on the road.
Everyone on the road, everyone around you, basically. Anyone that you can foresee that you can injure. I mean, you know, pedestrians, people on footpaths. You can fall asleep and run off the road and bang, run into anyone.
Yeah, so your neighbour is someone who must be in close proximity to you, so there's some connection. So anyway, it's a very famous case. It's a case which is taught in law schools throughout...
What's the first thing you ever learn if you do a law course or if you'd study some sort of legal studies?
Yeah, throughout the...
English-speaking world.
English-speaking world. And it's Mrs. Donahue is the person who took the case up, probably a lawyer, you know, might have maybe pushed her. And it got to the House of Lords through legal aid because...
Can I ask you this one, Harry? Do you reckon she'd still win today because, don't forget, they drink that worm at the bottom of the tequila?
Well, there's all sorts of different concoctions which people drink, and you know, you're never quite sure what's at the bottom of a bottle or a glass. But today there's Evolved Trade Practices Act, and you might sue under what's called the Trade Practices Act for someone who's a manufacturer.
Yeah, it imposes a pretty high duty on the manufacturer.
Yeah.
To ensure that the goods they supply are safe.
Yeah, but I think anyone who studies legal studies and anyone who studies law really throughout the English-speaking world refers back to this case.
Well, that's a starting point. And that is a starting point.
That's a starting point. Yeah. So it's affectionately known as a snail in the bottle case, and I think there's a restaurant called Snail in the Bottle in England.
There is.
And as I say, the facts are very unusual, and
but it's famous. I mean, everyone that studies
law knows it.
Yep.
But that's a case where she had sort of a minor injury, which is gastro, and she suffered some sort of shock when she drank the ginger beer. But there's a case running in Sydney now, which is at the other extreme, which is terribly serious, which is a 7-year-old girl who had a chicken twister from KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it's had disastrous consequences on her. Perhaps we'll return to that case. It's running at the moment, but perhaps we'll return to that case after the break. We're having a short break at the moment.